So first I'd like to start by asking you where you're from.
So I'm from France, from a city called Metz, which is 1 hour and a half drive from Strasbourg, near Germany.
And when did you start studying music?
I started when I was about 5 or 6 with the piano, with my parents. My dad was a piano player, and then I started with percussion when I was 12.
Why did you choose percussion? Why did you not stay with piano?
Well, I think it's there are two reasons to that. My dad and my mom were playing the piano, had piano when during their education. They were telling me a lot of stuff about it, and there were a lot on my head, I would say. So percussion was a way to relax a bit and to do my own stuff without them guarding me all the time. And the second reason is also that I just like the fact that you have so many instruments. As you can see also in this picture here, we have so many of them. So it's pretty easy to practice because you just change all the time the instrument. The technique stays the same, but yeah,
So when did you decide that you wanted to become a professional musician?
I decided when I was around 19. I was not really great at school, but it was going okay without me doing a lot of efforts. And then I just discovered after some time that in music it was the only field where when I was doing some efforts, I was getting some payback. I was getting some results, and I had a great satisfaction from it. So I just thought it would be really nice to make it a living.
So where did you study?
Yeah, so I did a first year in The Hague in the Netherlands, and then I did my bachelor in Strasbourg in France, and then I moved to Copenhagen to study masters.
And is there a particular percussion instrument that's your specialty? Like some people are timpanists and some are marimba players, some are drum set players.
Well, it's hard to choose. It's hard to say. Because of my job, because of this position in the orchestra, I have to be ready to play on everything. So I had to practice on everything. I would say in the orchestra, I like to play the cymbals, and then if it's soloistic, yeah, well, I tend to like keyboard instruments more, like marimba or vibraphone.
Tell us a little bit about what your job is now. You work with the NFM Wrocław Philharmonic. So what exactly is your
Mhm.
job in the orchestra?
My job is to play whatever instrument I have to play in the orchestra, which is written in the part. So let's say that we have a program coming up for next week. Then we make a division in the percussion section, who is playing what, and then I have to prepare this part and play.
So when you have an
So
orchestra piece, you'll have, for example, someone playing snare drum, someone playing xylophone, someone playing cymbals, someone playing triangle, and you all rotate for each concert. You're not always the same person playing the same instrument, right?
yeah, exactly. That's what is really interesting about this job is
Mhm.
that you don't always do the same, so it stays challenging and it stays interesting.
Okay, so now we'll go ahead and you can do your presentation.
All right. So what I will talk about is about two little groups of instruments among all these instruments we have in the percussion section. I will talk about the drums and the keyboard instruments. I will begin with the drums. I will talk about the snare drum. How is that working exactly? So you have this box here, a shell that is round, and then you have a skin on it, a plastic head here. You use a stick to hit it, yeah? It vibrates, it makes a sound, and then on the bottom of it, you have another head that is resonating and making these wires vibrate, which makes this specific sound of the snare drum. One of the oldest ancestors of the drum is 3,000 years old. So we can see the same structure. We can see here the shell, as I told before. And then we can see the head here, which is the same structure than this, the same material, bronze. So now we'll just jump a little bit in time, and we'll go to this old grandpa of the snare drum, which we can see looks a little bit more like what we're using right now. We see the shell as well, we see the sticks, as I showed before, almost the same as we're using, and we also see the heads that are also on the shell, like the one before. The only difference here is that the head here is most probably a natural head. So it could be a calf head or a goat head, like for the timpani, as Mr. Diego said it a few weeks ago.
I'm seeing also that's different from our modern drums is you have some ropes there on the side rather than metal, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's, for example, here. I don't know if you see it well, but that's some kind of leather stripes that can put more or less tension on the heads on both sides. So it was used in the army. It was used as a part of a band that could have the flute, as we see here, and it was used to give as a way to communicate, to give orders. For example, move forward, go backwards, retreat, attack, all this. Here we see another picture. And as the orders are a bit more complicated sometimes than just go forward, go backwards, there is a whole vocabulary to it. And here I don't know if you can see it very well, but that's a score of, I would guess, a book to learn all these formulas. So on this score we can just see these we can say quarter notes, right? And under it we see a text which is in French, and it's written dedans, which means inside. And with the drawing and everything, we can understand that it's about the spear that you have to get inside the other one, the enemy. So there was a signal like that to attack in this way. I believe that there was a signal for almost everything: go right, go left, all this kind of stuff. Now, I would like to show you a video, a recording of drum corps. Because now the thing is that we still have these army bands, but of course with the progress of communication we don't use them anymore on the field because it's way too dangerous. But instead of that, they're doing shows, they're doing concerts, parades, and yeah, well, that's it. Now, so that's a drum corps from Switzerland. So I will share the link of the videos I will show you at the end in the chat. And I also picked up two more links to some other videos that are pretty interesting as well. So in the end you will see also another link to the same band, but at some other event. So now that we talked a bit about the snare drum, we will go to the keyboard instruments. Do you see it well? Right. Okay. So first is the name. Why do we call it a keyboard instrument? Because of the disposition of the bars we're playing on. it looks very much like the keyboard of the piano. So we see here the white keys, the black keys, and now here we go on the xylophone. We have the same disposition. So if you're able to find a C on a piano, you can find a C on this xylophone. So how is it working? You can play on the bars with three kind of mallets. There is a plastic one, a wooden head, or also for the marimba, for example, you can use one with some material on it, yarn, in this case. And then you hit the bar vibrates, which makes the sound, which sells some air, and it goes into the resonators we see here.
The different mallet types, what do they do?
That depends if you want to play simply if you want to play softer or louder, or for example, if you're practicing and in the next room you have your parents sleeping, for example, well, it's better to use a mallet that has some yarn on it than the very hard one. That's the choice of it. Or for example, in the orchestra, it's very much about the atmosphere you want to put. If it has to be very aggressive, then you will take the hardest you have. If it has to be a little piano roll, very soft, very discreet, just for a small atmosphere or of, I don't know, nature maybe or something, then you will use the softer one. The xylophone, of course, wooden bars. Yeah? And here we go to metal bars, which is an instrument some of your students know, the glockenspiel. We see the same disposition. So as a keyboard, yeah, black keys, white keys. And here we have the bigger xylophone, the marimba. Two more octaves, and it sounds lower than the xylophone. And here we have the big brother of the glockenspiel, metal bars as well, the vibraphone. And we also have a pedal here to choose between long or short sounds on the vibraphone. Yeah? So now about the ancestors, the origins of the keyboard instruments. I will first talk about some instruments from Asia. So this and the next one. So here you see a metal keyboard and here you see a wooden one. That's a part of a group of instruments called gamelan. The gamelan instruments were invented in Indonesia as a communication device to call the gods. It was like a way to communicate with God. So it started all with one instrument, as we can say a hello. Yeah. So it was starting with the gongs here, and then the further it went, the more words they needed. So then they added the other instruments around it to make it more, to have more vocabulary, more words to say. That's why we have all these instruments. And here we see an ensemble that is playing these instruments, also with two singers here. Here we have the gongs, and here we have the keyboard instruments here.
And Mr. Camille, are the gongs played like the keyboard too? How do you play the gongs?
So the gong is, if I may say, like a big plate, and then in the middle of that plate you have a kind of ball, little ball, and to play on the gong you have to aim for this middle, for this ball, and that's where you will get a sound. Usually these gongs are tuned, and of course, as the bars on the xylophone or on the marimba, the smaller the size, the higher the pitch, the higher the note of the gong. And so that's, for example, huge gongs, so very, very low notes. Now, for another ancestor of the keyboard instruments is this one called the balafon, that comes from Africa. We see the same system on the xylophone. We have the wooden bars, and here we have some resonators. These resonators are made of a fruit that is called the gourd. You can have different sizes. Here we see a big one. Just before we saw a smaller one. I mean, we can see here that the stick is almost as long as the instrument. For this instrument, it's played in ensembles that are not more than 5 people. involving 5 people. So you would have usually 2 balafons, like on these pictures, and then some drums and probably a singer. Okay, now the interesting difference now between the drums and the keyboard is concerning the repertoire. So the repertoire is a kind of group of pieces we can play on that particular instrument. So for example, the repertoire of a snare drum or a military drum would include marches, military marches, these kind of things. Now, what is interesting, what I wanted to say is that as we could see that the drum was much older maybe than the keyboard instrument, we still can have more of this repertoire, more pieces to play if we play keyboard instruments, because we can kind of steal pieces from other instruments. And now I will show you another video of an arrangement of a piece for violin at the origin. The composer is called Paganini, and here we will see a marimba player that is playing with 4 mallets, so 2 mallets in each hand. And his name is Johann Britker. Okay, so I will send you also the link for this one, and I found another video of an ensemble that is called Wave Quartet. It's 4 percussion players that are playing with a small string ensemble, so violins, alto, and cello, and they're playing an old cembalo concerto from Bach.
Beautiful, very beautiful instrument. And his mallets that he's chosen here are yarn mallets, aren't they?
Yes, 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 exactly. Because most of the time you play with this kind of mallets on the marimba. All right, now one last thing I would like to talk about. It's not related to what I just said right now. I will talk just about a way to practice technique. Yes, so I said that ugly word, technique.
The ugly word is practice, I think.
Yeah, we don't like that word. So, here's a way to practice technique. At least it's working. It's working really fine for me. Is that instead of just practicing some moves, some little technical exercises, instead of just practicing with the metronome, I practice them sometimes with a song, right? So what I did is that I found 12 of them, 12 songs, and I measured the tempo of each of them. So I've put them in an order from the slowest to the fastest. And every time, for example, I want to practice a rhythm or a technical exercise, I can choose the tempo I would like to practice it in, and it plays the song, and then I have to play along it for the 3 to 6 minutes it's playing.
You're replacing your metronome and you're using a song instead of your metronome, right?
Exactly. Yeah. 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 But it's just, yeah, well, it's not working. Unfortunately, for now, it's not working with keyboard instruments because then you have some problems with the tonality.
Of
The
course.
notes are not matching the song, but it's working very well with the practice pad. So, for example, if you have a little exercise, so what's the point of it? Already in the practice, of beginning slow before playing fast, is that when you're learning, for example, a new rhythm or something new, you're creating a connection in your brain, right? It's the information that goes to your wrist so you can do the exercise at the right speed. Now, the thing is that if you don't spend enough time building this connection, then well, it's not strong enough to go faster. So you have to do it slow, step by step, until it's really in you, until you really know it well, and then you can reach the speed you really need. And then it doesn't take so much time. The only thing is patience in the beginning to practice a bit slower. And of course, this playlist just makes sense for you maybe if you don't really want to check what's the exact tempo of each song. But what is interesting here is just that you have the songs you like, so you practice technique, you spend some time on it without even noticing because you like these songs you're listening to. So you play along them, it's like you're playing with your favorite band, and well, time flies like that, you know. I think that's it.
We have one question already. We have someone who is asking, does Mr. Camille play all the percussion instruments during his daily practice? Do you practice all the instruments every day or do you rotate your practice? How do you prepare for all of those instruments?
We have a lot of these instruments. The thing is that it's all divided in groups of them. So, for example, if during the day, what is important for me is to practice a bit of snare drum because the snare drum is the basic, is what I began with and what everyone begins with. That's to build up your technique. Then I try to do a bit of keyboard, so it can be vibraphone, marimba, also to practice this four mallet technique because that's something you have to do a lot to get good at it and to get used to it. That it's not something strange and you get all tensed by doing it. So I always try to divide my day into this kind of three groups. I also try to play timpani a bit because it would be a shame to forget about it if I studied it so long. So yeah, no, I'm not practicing every instrument, but I just divide it in groups that are matching almost all the instruments. So I'm practicing snare drum, then I'm practicing some keyboard, and then I'm doing maybe a little bit of accessories like the tambourine or castagnettes. That just keeps me in shape also for the orchestra, and yeah, it's just that way. And of course, I cannot practice 16 hours a day, so so that's the only way I found to stay in shape for yeah almost everything.
So you're rotating depending on the music that you're preparing, but you're also always practicing
Yeah.
the drum and the keyboard to keep that constantly fresh.
Yeah. And then after it's just about the how much I need this one this week or the other one. So yeah, you organize always a little bit.
Okay, we have another question. She would like to know, is it hard to learn to play a percussion piece in a short time when you're preparing something for the orchestra?
Well, like everything, if you organize well, it's not that difficult. So so it needs a bit of organization. As also Mr. Diego said it a few weeks ago, we have this schedule. We have the rehearsals in the morning, and then in the afternoon we're kind of free to organize our time as we want. So we can practice these pieces, and the most important also is that we can listen to different recordings, to different versions, so we know more or less how it should sound, what's the tempo, if they play loud or not, yeah, what's the preferences, for example, between different countries, different traditions. So it's not that difficult, but it needs a bit of organization. Yeah, you have to know when you need to really play it, step by step, listen to the piece, and then yeah, well, know maybe a little bit about the piece. I like to know also historically when it was composed and who was the composer, and yeah.
Shimon would like to know, does Mr. Camille know how to sing? Do you use singing in your practice or your teaching ever?
Yeah, yeah. I was using in my teaching. Because I noticed that it was a way to repeat something. Children, when they begin, it's very easy to sing with them. It gets more difficult after when they're around 12, 15. Yeah, that gets pretty difficult to sing with them. But from 6 until then, it's pretty easy and it's nice and it's fun and they learn faster also that way. So I had this kind of exercises when you had the snare drum, the tom and the lower tom, a higher and a lower. And then, yeah, well, I was singing with them to have these three different sounds, and then after to practice just singing with the movements if they didn't have instruments at home. And yeah, it made the learning a bit better. But then about my own singing, well, I had to in my studies. I had to sing. We
Also.
had theory classes where, I had to.
Okay, we have one more question. What is Mr. Camille's favorite orchestral piece?
Wow. It's pretty difficult to say. I will just say
He loves them all.
Mahler fifth. Yeah, I like them all. I mean, if there is a good percussion part, I like them.
Me too. I'm the same.
So, yeah, well, I don't know, but as a listener, if I don't play it as a listener, I really like Mahler fifth.
What kind of percussion parts are in Mahler Fifth?
Mahler fifth, it's cymbals, snare drum, bass drum, and triangle, I think.
So you have a full percussion section in
And
that one.
yeah, 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 and it's really fun to play, but it's as a listener, and it's really nice also.
Mr. Camille, anything else? Okay,
I can
so
maybe share my link.
yeah, if you would share your links in the chat. Of course, if you want any other percussion activities, you can contact me, and I have a whole list of wonderful things that you can do. I also wanted to recommend to you guys Percussive Arts Society, pas.org. This month, the Percussive Arts magazine is free. This is a very nice resource, and it's usually quite expensive to get it as a member of PAS, but they've made it the April edition free for everyone. So you can go online and read the articles in that magazine if you're interested. Thank you so much for being here, and then we will see you again on May the 9th. Mr. Camille, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. See you.
Mr. Camille, do you like to eat the gourd fruit?
I've never tried this fruit, so no, I cannot tell you if I like it or not. I would have to try it once.